Good morning and welcome to Rise and Shine. Of course, we're coming to you live from Uyo, the very beautiful city in Akwa Ibom State. My name is Francis Oyima Edet. And today, as always, we will be talking Nigeria, taking you around the latest development and, of course, reactions from Nigerians across the different states as far as yesterday's nationwide protest organized by the NLC, TUC, and indeed the generality of Nigerians is concerned. And of course, you know that that yesterday it seems like the protest was not going to hold because we've been having going back and forth between the federal government and the NLC, of course, the TUC as well. But we saw the protests happening across different states yesterday. We saw it happening in Akwa Ibom State. We saw Abuja, Lagos, Ondo, and a few other states, even though reactions were that the expectations of Nigerians had expected that all the 36 states of the Federation and the FCT would have joined in the protest. But be that as it may, we saw also that the protest went to the National Assembly and of course laid their demands to the legislators, who also promised that within the week they were going to look into the issues and concerns raised. That's also took us to the meeting between President Ahmed Bola Tinubu and the leadership of the trade union organization and of course the Nigerian Labour Congress. Of course, you know I'm not always going to be here alone. It's always a pleasure being here with you on Rise and Shine with the adorable partner who's always, you know, brought the charm and glow to the set. Good morning, Uyai. How are you this day?
Good morning, Africa. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Akwa Ibom State. It's a beautiful Thursday morning to be alive and a great day to rise and shine with you on the other side. Thanks for choosing Spectrum Television and, of course, Rise and Shine. A plethora of things that we are going to talk today, of course, like Francis just said, the NLC protest nationwide, you know, is what is buzzing across the lips of so many Nigerians this morning. Did it achieve any thing? Was it widely you know, accepted even by Nigerians and the likes? These are very topical issues this morning, but I will not forget to first of all remind you to follow us across all our social media platforms, because not just are we here to have these conversations, we can't have these conversations without you. So if we are not hearing what you think about these issues, what your concerns are, then we might just be having theoretical conversations. We need to feel the pulse of Nigerians to know where our heart sits with regards to these issues in the country. So you can head straight to Twitter at spectrumtv online, make your real-time conversations there, and we'll take it on the program this morning. You can also follow us across all social media platforms, all of which you can find at spectrumtv.ng. It's a very good morning from my end.
Indeed, it's a very good morning. I guess we'll start a conversation from the military junta we saw happening in Niger Republic. Of course, earlier in the week, we saw the chairman of the ECOWAS, very own President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, speaking tough and telling the coup plotters in Niger to restore the democratically elected president within the period of 7 days, being 1 week. Also, we saw you know, the other military junta in Mali and Burkina Faso coming out to say if the ECOWAS were to engage force in restoring the democratically elected President Bazoum, they were going to come to the aid of Niger Republic. Well, of course, there was a twist yesterday. We had seen before that the ECOWAS had threatened a lot of sanctions on Niger Republic. We saw that light was a little bit of a big challenge in Niger. People were having to have just an hour of electricity and be off for a lot more hours. And the Niger you know, power sector have said this is as a result of Nigeria cutting power supply to Niger Republic as part of the sanctions that has been meted out on the country as a result of the coup that took place. Now, if you recall that last week we saw the presidential guard, you know, take over power, and of course they declared themselves the one in charge of the Niger Republic after taking President Bazoum into custody. And of course, they said the reason for their action was as a result of the inadequacies of the president and his government to lead the country in the right direction. But then, shortly after we saw that, ECOWAS, the African Union, and other foreign bodies spoke glowingly to condemn what happened in Niger Republic. And of course, the ECOWAS had said they were not going to sit by the fence anymore to watch different coups happening in the sub-region. And that is, of course, as they said, the use of force to ensure that, the Niger people get back their president might be on the table as a last resort, of course, if all other negotiations fail. Now, a lot of reactions trailed this news yesterday. First, Nigerians were asking if we are, the ones supplying electricity to Niger Republic. Now, across the streets of Nigeria, one of the biggest concerns has been that we've been having epileptic power supply. So how do we supply power to another country while in our own country we do not even have enough to satisfy our teeming population?
We're actually supplying the power in Niger Republic so good that once we withdrew, the supply of power, it's actually a major issue in Niger right now. So you should actually think about how well we have been going by this particular supply. And of course, like you said, well, it's no news to Nigerians at this point that some neighboring African countries get their power supply from Nigeria. How that is happening and being sustained. Some of these countries, they do not, literally, their power does not blink, but we stay for days and weeks without light. When, just on a lighter note, this very glorious Thursday morning, in some areas in Nigeria, that once power supply comes to your area 3-4 straight days, know that on the 5th, 6th day you're going to see the minders of the system come request for the fees
bill.
Yes, but all the other 4 weeks you did not see any power supply. 4 steady days of power supply in your area. Just know that they are coming for their money. But this is a rather serious issue. Of course, more sanctions have continued to come in. Niger is receiving more sanctions from ECOWAS, from even other international Western allies. But of course, the conversation remains the fact that they are, Mali and Burkina Faso, on behalf of Niger, are even bluffing, Western allies, and are saying if we even see, the body language where you attempt to interfere with what's going on, the issue is going to escalate. But that's a major problem. But let's see. Since currently Niger stands as a willful member of ECOWAS, let's see if the condemnation by ECOWAS. Right now we're looking at the power supply has been withdrawn by Nigeria to Niger. Let's see if some of these sanctions will be strong enough to deter this military officials that have taken over power in Niger at this time. But it's a pitiable thing. It's already 1 week plus, and we're not even hearing any promises. Of course, we've seen more politicians even being taken captive, other than releasing just President Bazoum at this time.
Well, the fact that the ECOWAS have sent delegation rather to Niger to try and find a lasting solution in terms of negotiation is a step taken in the right direction by ECOWAS. Of course, we know that when these guys who are in military uniform take over power, it's always very serious challenge before they can hand in the power again back to civilian rule. And that is why a lot of persons, particularly in support of what ECOWAS is doing, I think it's about time. We've watched as a continent, other countries being taken over by military juntas. We've watched different coups happening in the continent. And we'll have to reference the speech of Ahmed Bola Tinubu when he took over as the chairman of ECOWAS. He reiterated the stance of ECOWAS and the fact that Africa can no longer operate as business with business as usual, that is enough time to put an end to the era of military junta and overthrowing of a democratically elected government. And of course, at this point, a lot of persons have said it might be necessary for, the ECOWAS and other organizations, the African Union, international communities to come together and maybe consider the use of force as they have threatened in the event that the military junta in Niger Republic does not adhere, and of course within the period of 1 week or the immediate time restore President Bazoum back to power. Of course, that is said to might be going different ways. One, we're looking at the casualties that might come in the event that war becomes imminent, or force or external aggression becomes imminent. In the event that that happened, we'll be having the Niger Republic, the Niger people rather, engaged in brawls and possibly loss of lives, destructions of properties. But if we're able to have different conversations of having tactical teams being able to get into Niger Republic, and of course, go directly to extracting the people involved in this coup, then we might be able to get, the Niger people out of harm's way, restore President Bazoum, and get democracy back on course. Of course, at this point in time, the world is watching Niger Republic. The world is now also watching Mali and Burkina Faso, who have said they are going to come to the aid of Niger Republic. And also, some conversations have been that maybe it's about time ECOWAS doesn't just sanction Niger Republic. ECOWAS doesn't just move against Niger Republic, but also moves against Burkina Faso and Mali at the same time, so that whatever needs to be done, if we're restoring democracy, we're restoring Niger Republic, we restore Burkina Faso and Mali, and then the entirety of the continent will know, okay, we are all back on course. And then the military are given the strictest of warning to stay off the course of governance and know that democracy has come to stay.
How possible is it to even, deal with the tripod coup at the same time? I mean, Burkina Faso and Mali have been there for quite a while. If ECOWAS was not able to handle it all this while, of course, remember that they even have the presence of the likes of Wagner Group in these countries trying to stabilize, the coups and all of the insurgency that is there. So if, ECOWAS was not able to handle these issues before now, why is it that now that it has sprung up in Niger, you think that they will be able to put their might together at the same time to handle the issue? It just sounds like a far cry from what can actually happen. But of course, we've heard the ECOWAS leadership say that at this time, unity is the most important factor for, bringing resolution to these issues within the continent of Africa. But on the heel of, cutting power supply from Niger, we've also seen industry experts call for caution and advise the federal government to be diplomatic in handling the matter. Of course, looking at the fact that Niger leg is under a contract with a power firm in Nigeria, Mainstream Energy, for the supply of electricity. So it may not just be that the Federal Republic of Nigeria is supplying light, it is sublet to, a mainstream power company in the country. So they're saying diplomacy is also very important at this time. But we know that, ECOWAS leadership will look into all the, terms and conditions as to what will best ameliorate the issue in Niger at this time. But let's see what the effects will be, and let's see what the soldiers will decide. The military, I beg your pardon, in Niger will decide at this time. We do hope that democratically elected government is reinstated as soon as possible without, surfacing of any kind of bloodbath in Niger Republic. But then let's move. On our flash news this morning, a very sad story in Lagos State. Of course, pictures made the rounds on social media yesterday of a young medical doctor who was caught in her prime because of an elevator accident. Of course, this medical doctor was in her hospital facility when the elevator fell from the 10th floor, and crushed her to death. More like she died as a result of injuries sustained from that particular accident. And this is a very, very sad story to be telling at this time. Of course, like as you can see her picture right there on the screen, young medical doctor who was doing her residency, and then her life is cut short. A lot of things to be looked into at this particular time. What happened? Maintenance culture in our hospitals. Of course, we also see that doctors, NMA in Lagos State, have moved out to protest this particular death. And of course, there's been sparks of protest requesting justice over Dr. Viere Diaso's death. And this is a really, really difficult one at this time.
It's a difficult one, the NMA going on strike. Of course, it's one of the things, the immediate actions that unions like NMA would do in the event of things like this. But let's look at why the accident even happened in the first place. Part of the challenges we have in Africa, Nigeria, has always been, traced down to maintenance culture. So, first thing is maintenance culture. Why was the, lift not maintained properly? And in the event of the accident, we've been told, according to the news, that the lady died as a result of absence of blood in the hospital for transfusion. So you're talking about an hospital in Lagos State, of all states of the Federation, without readily accessible blood bank in the situation of emergency. Now, if we had blood bank, if we had blood available in the blood bank, her life could have been saved. But the fact that the hospital could exist in that part of the city without a functional, readily accessible and available blood for donation immediately to people who come in times of emergency just goes to show the level of decay, the level of unseriousness on the parts of some, medical experts or medical facilities. Now, a lot of persons might argue maybe blood just finished, maybe they didn't foresee circumstances like this happening. But on a daily basis, if you go to the accident and emergency units in our hospitals, part of the reasons people die is because we do not have everything put in place to handle emergency. You can literally take somebody who has been involved in an accident into the accident and emergency ward, and you would have to wait for hours before that person is being attended to. Now, the doctors will always tell us time is the difference between life and death in every situation. So if you bring the person in on time, we will be able to save. We might be able to save. If you don't bring in the person on time, we are not going to be able to save. But then there is a big challenge. You bring in somebody on time, the medical facilities is not ready with the necessary tools to take care of this person. The doctors, the medical professionals there are not readily available, or they have their hands too full to even attend to these other emergencies that you are bringing in. All of these things are concerns that I am hoping, Nigerians are hoping, NMA is not just protesting for the life of this doctor that is lost, but also the protest should focus on ensuring that hospitals get to take into consideration and prioritize things that needs to be prioritized. One of such is blood. I recently had to, be at the hospital, and then I also discovered it was a very big challenge that, it got to a point of being asked, we need somebody to donate blood immediately. And I'm like, hello, in a hospital that you were supposed to have an operation on somebody, then you had decided, the doctors had said, okay, we are going to need XYZ pints of blood, and that was provided in excess. So in the event that an emergency happened and you had exhausted those pints of blood, the hospital had no other blood stored that you can easily say, okay, make payment and let the blood be given out. So these are concerns that we need to look into in Nigeria. I sometimes wonder what we think. There are literally people I know who are on hospital rolls to donate blood freely every other month. Sure. So what are we doing with these bloods? Do we hoard them to sell them to the highest bidder, or we keep them for some other, greedy purposes? Because I don't really understand why you would have people on the queue every day donating blood freely without being paid for. But when it comes to situations of emergency that people actually need this blood to be served, we don't find the bloods.
It's a lot of problem because I think the distressing information about Dr. Diaz's death is the fact that allegedly she was stuck in that elevator for about 40 minutes. How is someone in an accident for 40 minutes within a premises? I don't know. Are there no security agents, in the hospital that are manning these elevators who would have heard her cry for help 40 whole minutes within a hospital? Now, if this is happening in a hospital, Francis, how much more if these accidents are happening in other facilities around the country? So even within the hospital facility, people are not safe. But we see that the NMA in Lagos State, of course, we have that press statement right now on our screens, of course, dated 2nd of August 2023. Now, the NMA in Lagos State have directed doctors working at the General Hospital or DAN, where she worked, as well as Lagos Island Maternity Hospital and Marcy Street Children's Hospital to commence a strike action until thorough investigation into the cause of Dr. Vieira Diaz's death is established. Of course, we also see the fact that they have expressed concern over the long-standing issues with the same elevator, Francis. So it's not like it doesn't sound like this is the first time this elevator is acting out. Now that it has taken a life, you are now going to see that suddenly monies are going to come up from that same hospital that might be decrying that lack of funds is the reason why that elevator is that way. I don't know how Nigerians think. And when we also want to deploy modern technology to our facilities, I do hope that we, are educate ourselves enough to know that if accidents happen in these facilities, we need to be able to have a response that can handle the situation immediately. Elevator accidents are not even anything to be toyed with at this time. People get trapped in elevators for minutes and for hours. Remember that, first of all, you're going to be knocked out of air because there's no air supply in that machine, and all of those kinds of things. It's a very sad story. Like Francis earlier said, this protest will not be able to bring back her life. But why do we always need to get to the end of having a protest before minimal issues that can be resolved will now be looked into? Because now you're going to find even the enemy in Lagos State running helter-skelter. You're going to find the management of these hospitals, running helter-skelter, when this could have been nipped in the bud. Prime life is cut short just because of managerial carelessness, administrative carelessness. This was absolutely unavoidable, and it is a very distressful information at this time. Of course, we do hope that and pray that the soul of the reposed do rest in peace, and her family, friends and loved ones really literally find comfort in this very time of painful experience. But it's really a sad tale. Let's hope to see how this story develops, because it's going to be one thing or the other. Of course, investigations have been pushed for. Let's see what will come up. And my problem with when accidents or events happen and they say, oh, a committee has been set to investigate, that's all we usually hear. Because at the end of the day, we are not going to hear how this case developed. Okay, who was nabbed for not maintaining the elevator? How many times was this elevator highlighted to be having problems, and the management of the hospital did not do anything? The CMDA in the hospital should really be nabbed for this one.
Not just the CMD, the entirety of the management of the hospital, the ownership of the hospital should go in for it. Because if we don't get to a point where people get punished for negligence in the line of duty, we're not going to see anything happening. I recall an incident that almost would have been tragic personally in Lagos. That was around 2020 at a banking facility. Now, the security personnel knew that of the two elevators they had, one was not working. But there was no signpost. I wouldn't make sure.
Yes, why not also block it out? Yes.
At the elevator entrance to tell people this is not functional.
True that.
So I went in, pressed the button, and if I wasn't very deliberate, if I wasn't looking down, that would have been my end. Because I stepped in and there was nothing on the floor of the elevator.
Oh, goodness.
So attempting to step in and noticing that I had to balance my hand, and then drew the attention of the security. Was like, oh, sorry, this elevator is out of operation. I'm like, hello, in a banking hall, an elevator is out of operation, and you are seated here as a security.
You are not conscious. You are not conscious of the fact that people are still using that place. How come it did not see you go? No, I think, not to cut your story short, I think in Nigeria, in our legal system, Nigerians should also get used to suing. If you get into a place and you do not receive the services that you are required, we should get used to suing. Because I think if we come into that legal education in the country, people will address themselves. Because that thing that happened to you shouldn't have been taken like this. Sue the bank, and all of these kinds of issues. Now, I will not say anything, so it will not be as if like I was instigating. Even like the family of this lady, what exactly? Remember,
you're not instigating, but that's the reality.
She went to work to save lives and lost her own life in the process. It doesn't even make sense, at this time. But these are, like you said, these are the ways that we leave the most important things to run around with the unimportant things.
Well, it's become more or less like a tradition in Nigeria that people are more interested in using people. People are more interested in going after things that are less important at the detriment of things that are more important. Yeah, through my experience, I did call the attention of the bank manager, and the security guy got reprimanded and all of that. But that was the end of it because I didn't stay for a long time, let alone follow up with what was happening. But this goes to show that even in the big facilities
Yeah.
that we have
That
in
you
this
expect to
country,
know
that
better.
you expect that, maintenance culture, you expect that safety precautions would be put in a priority list, and people who are saddled with responsibilities will actually take this thing serious. You will still walk in and find a lot of loopholes here and there, loopholes that at the slightest mistake somebody's life is gone. At the slightest mistake a family will be thrown into mourning. At the slightest mistake somebody who came out to transact business or do his or her own job, he's out down the line. So we need to get to a point in Nigeria where, like you said, sue. I think also maybe one of the reasons Nigerians don't sue is because the legal system seems unfair at some point. And many have said, okay, what is the problem? You go against in and out of the court. And then at some point, you see that the hope of actually getting justice is very bleak. So we need to get to that culture where we intentionally hold people accountable for their negligence in the line of duty that leads to loss of lives and properties.
Well, we pray that her soul rest in peace and that the family can find comfort at this time. But let's move to our major story this morning. The fact that the president has sent 19 more names to the National Assembly for screening and confirmation as ministers. Of course, remember that when he sent the first list, it was, said that more names were going to be released. And just yesterday, the National Assembly received new names, 19 more names. Of course, these names were delivered by the Chief of Staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, to the Senate President Godswill Akpabio. Of course, these names were read out on the floor of the Senate after the screening of the first batch of names sent by President Tinubu last week. Of course, now we see the second batch of lists also include 4 former governors and some other popular politicians. And the first big question is, are we just recycling old hands in this ministerial cabinet? Because it's more like, Nigerians are saying every single hand that you knew had something to do with the campaign and success story of the Tinubu-led administration into the presidency has been given a ministerial position. Is this really about service, or this is about compensating them for the works well done? Remember that, of course, the likes of Boyega Oyetola is the former governor of Osun State. His election in Osun State was embattled because they kept going back and forth. We're trying to, prove that the People's Democratic Party that produced, what's his darling name now?
Adeleke?
Adeleke, thank you very much. You know, that produced Adeleke. They tried to do that back and forth to say it wasn't true. Now, is this a kind of, compensation for Oyetola now being a member of the APC camp, and that he failed out, that the elections didn't pull through for him on Osun State? We are seeing these names pop up again. Of course, Oyetola is part of those names. We also see Atiku Bagudu, who himself is also a former governor. We see Tanko Sununu and Tunji Alausa. Bello Matawali also made the list of former governor. Simon Bakola Long, former governor of Plateau State, now is also one of those listed. 19 names brought to the National Assembly to be screened for ministerial positions. Let's not forget the fact that portfolios have not been released at this time also, but we're just screening them blank for the positions that they will get.
Well, it's a question Nigerians are asking what exactly will happen, but a lot of Nigerians are also not surprised. Taking your mind back to the electioneering period, we saw the likes of the PDP presidential candidate saying, "Winning your ward, get a federal appointment or get an appointment from the government," and that, of course, in as much as Ahmed Bola Tinubu did not outrightly also make that same promise, but he did say he was going to reward everybody who worked to ensure that he emerges as the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And if you also trace the very first list that came out of the ministerial appointment, we also saw that the ministerial slot for Akwa Ibom State went to somebody within the Korekwene senatorial district, where the Senate president is from. And now there have been concerns also coming from Akwa Ibomites particularly as to why we'll have two federal presidents from one senatorial district. You have the senator, and of course, as the Senate president. Why couldn't we have had a ministerial appointment going to another part of the state outside where the Senate president is from? But that is just one argument from the people of Akwa Ibom State. Now, you are having, if you look at the list with this one, is about 10 former governors of the state. Let's look at how these governors had performed. Let's even say they had performed. Are we looking at a point in Nigeria where we are going to recycle the same old hands all round the clock at the detriment of the younger generation? It is the same National Assembly, the same presidency who are saying that placing of age limit has limited people from getting jobs. Placing of age limit has limited people who could have contributed their quota to the advancement of Nigeria's economy. And of course, they've called for it to be scrapped. So what happens to the same federal government led by Ahmed Bola Tinubu and the National Assembly, understanding that recycling of old politicians is also denying the country the possibility and the opportunity to have new hands, capable hands, Nigerians who are ready and willing to serve, Nigerians who have the ability to contribute to the growth of the country, being denied access, being denied the opportunity to serve, being denied the opportunity to contribute? What happens to them taking that cue from their own point of view and then bringing on new hands? All around the country, we are seeing on the 30s, we are seeing just early 30s, becoming president, becoming members of parliament, doing excellent things in their country. But in Nigeria, you would literally, if we were to take head counts, on the age of people within the National Assembly, it will shock the world to know that majority of those there are above 50s. They're in their 60s, 70s. So what happens to the generation of 30 and 40s? What happens to the generation of under 30s? Is it that the country is not going to go forward ever, or we are ready to always, get back in steps because we feel like we are the elders and we should always be on top of the situation?
I don't think the problem is even with the age bracket of who is being appointed. I won't even think so. If you like, keep the ministers still within the age bracket of 60 and 70, but why must it be the same set of hands? Now, this same set of hands are the people that contributed to what the Buhari-led administration was. Can we all collectively say that the Buhari-led administration was a successful one? Now, when we have this same set of hands, repeated, what are we expecting different if we have the same minders of the system? Like, a big question with this is, yes, let's get back to the various states. What did they do in their 8 years of governorship in their various states? what kind of impacts did they bring? When we can juxtapose that with the impact that they did, then we can say, okay, maybe this person is worthy of this ministerial position. But we find out that to a very large extent, some of these people performed abysmally in their states, but yet they are being given ministerial position. I think what cringes the skin of most Nigerians at this time is that we do not even know what they are being screened for. Screening them as ministers is one thing. Are they going to even put them in ministries that they have the requisite, knowledge about? Because I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and he said, it's not like there is a problem having politicians as ministers, because it is expected that these politicians are some forms and some kinds of technocrats across different fields. We are not expecting that someone who is not knowledgeable in anything would have a reason in the ladder of politics and gotten to the helms of affairs. We are expecting that there are some form of technocrats. I mean, they've been given the bone of contention. Now these people have gained governance in various states for a while, so it's expected that they have some form of technocrats is that going to be technocrats or techno something in their heads at this time. But how well do we know that they are going to do in the portfolios that are going to be delivered to them? Are they going to be assigned portfolios that they actually have the technical know-how to deliver? We do not know yet, because there is a form of secrecy that this ministerial nominations and screening is being shrouded in. First of all, there is a problem, a breach of the Electoral Act, for us to have seen some names released last week and 19 others just released yesterday. Why didn't the presidency follow through with the timetable that was given for the constitution of the ministerial cabinet and all of those? So there's a lot of issues back and forth with this. Already 8 names from past governors on the cabinet, and Nigerians were expecting, there was fingers crossed, and people were patiently waiting to see how many technocrats were actually going to make up the list of Tinubu's ministerial cabinet. But we are recycling mostly old hands. What to expect now? That's going to be for Nigerians to decide.
Well, it's rather unfortunate. I'd still say Nigerians are way disappointed with Ahmed Bola Tinubu's mantra of "I had been prepared for this. I have long been ready to serve Nigeria. It may look on this, it may look on that. It's my turn."
Doesn't seem to be so.
It doesn't seem that the president was ready for the job. I mean, if it was your turn, if you look at people who have said, "It's my turn, I've been ready, have been prepared for this," you would see them hit the ground running, as the president had promised to hit the ground running. But the only thing the president has succeeded in doing so far is hit the ground running with crisis in Nigeria, is hit the ground running with Nigerians suffering in hunger and poverty, is hit the ground running by throwing the economic situation of the country into a lot of situations that might not necessarily be upturned in any shortest possible time. So it's about time that Nigerians just get to understand the only place that we can do the magic that is required in this country is actually at the polling unit. If we don't get it right at the polling unit, if we don't get it right through the electoral institutions, then we might be forced to still live with such consequences as this. Already, the streets of social media are filled with stories of, "Oh, we had said this is going to happen unless we voted rightly. We had said unless we have the right person at the helms of affairs, this is likely what is going to happen." And of course, there's also been concern of APC, and of course, trying to compare between the time of former President Goodluck Jonathan and the things he was able to achieve, regardless of the crisis, regardless of the challenges that happened during his time, regardless of the different files that came from the opposition. And one thing everybody keeps remembering is President Jonathan was able to stabilize the price of foodstuff. He was able to maintain fuel subsidy. Even when he wanted to remove it and there was issues, he was able to maintain it. And the economy of the country was still going great. President Jonathan was, during his time, able to ensure that Nigerians were well taken care of. The issues of security, he was working on them. He was within that time also able to stabilize the dollar to the naira disparity. But now, fast track to where we are now. We cannot say that the APC-led government in the past 8 years, coming now to the 9th year under Ahmed Bola Tinubu has been able to give to Nigerians. The so-called change they wanted, the so-called change they so much passionately, preached to Nigerians. So at this point in time, with what happened yesterday, I think also with the protests that happened yesterday, I think this morning I saw a news about the federal government asking, the court to hold the leadership of the NLC and the TUC in contempt of court for going ahead with the protest. It's laughable. It's funny that at this point in time, even with what is happening, the federal government is still looking at the instrumentality of using or the possibility of using the court to gag the freedom of the Nigerian people. And I said here yesterday, if Ahmed Bola Tinubu doesn't listen, he's going to wake up to realize that he might be the Jagaban within the political class, but he's not the Jagaban of the entirety of Nigerians. And when Nigerians rise up and unite against him and the federal government, he's not going to turn out well. At this point, we need to understand that what is needed by Nigerians is just the way out, the solution. If you provide that solution, remember, before now, Nigerians didn't even want Ahmed Bola Tinubu. A lot of Nigerians were against him. But shortly after the few policy statements that he rolled out, Nigerians began to love him. Questions about putting an end to whatever happened within the electioneering period began to surface, and everybody began to say, okay, let's forget about politics, let's forget about who must have won, who didn't win, or all of that. Ahmed Bola Tinubu is ruling out policies that will be in the interest of Nigerians. So let's all support him. Let's all down our toes and support him. After 4 years, those who feel like grief can also, recontest the election. But right now, Nigerians are, in between those conversations. Were we wrong in, jumping into the conclusion that Ahmed Bola Tinubu had the interest of the people at heart?
I think one of the major issues that we have is that we are trying too early to define what the Tinubu-led administration is. We are trying too early to either give accolades or pull down at the same time. I mean, the man has barely done 60 days, 60 plus days, 2 months in office. What do we really expect of his policies? Do we expect that his policies in these past few days will just birth results at the same time? When it comes to the policies and all of the, the thoughts of Nigerians, it's neither here nor there, because there is little or nothing that he can achieve in 2 months. What we want to see, the body language, where is it going to lead us? Remember that, winding down the Buhari-led administration, there were conversations of the fact that, some of the projects that he implemented were not things that we're going to enjoy in the time of his governance. But, years down the line, we'll be able to look back and say, during the Buhari-led administration, this, and this were done. So let's say in the next 4 years, some of the policies that, President Tinubu has brought to bear, will it be beneficial to the country? That's a big question that everyone is asking. So it's neither here nor there. It's 2 months. Maybe we are too quick to attempt to give a cap of, this is good or this is bad to the Tinubu-led administration, because like he said, in the first 2-3 weeks of some of the policies he was bringing out, Nigerians began to hail, we think that this is the man that we needed, although we did not know. But all of a sudden that narrative is also changing. So maybe Nigerians should just pedal soft at this point and let's just follow the narrative and see what it is like. But of course, 19 more names sent to the Senate. 4 more past governors have emerged on that particular list. What are we going to be experiencing in terms of the cabinet with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? Let's let these stories rest at this point. When we return from the news brief desk, we have to look into the NLC protest holistically, things that happened all over Nigeria. Of course, we've heard this morning that the federal government is moving against the NLC and TUC with a court injunction to bring in the leaders. Is this even right? These and more are some of the conversations we'll have after this time out. To stay with us.
to deal with the situation on ground. Comrades, I will invite the Deputy President of TUC. Solidarity! Solidarity!
Please, information. I don't want us to record any incidents. Let's move. Let's move. Please let vehicles move now. Let them move, please. Please listen to your leaders. We don't want any people to give us any contrary opinion here. Listen to us and listen very good. Please, we are appealing to us. Let us give way to them.
Thank you very much. What we're saying invariably is, please give way for vehicles to pass. We don't want any tire to step on you. Please, we don't want to incur any incident. Solidarity! Yes, we are here today. First of all, let me appreciate you all. My name is Comrade Jimo Oyibo, third Deputy President, Trade Union Congress of Nigeria CUC, and the National President, Food, Beverage and Tobacco Senior Staff Association. Like I said, I want to appreciate all of you for defying the rain and assembling here for the purpose of achieving.
Ìkẹjà láwà ní underbridge níbi tí àwọn àgbáríjọpọ̀ ọmọ òṣìṣẹ́ tí wọ́n ti jáde láti fi ẹ̀hónú wọn hàn pẹ̀lú sùúrù fún ìjọba kí ìjọba kó lè mọ ohun tí wọ́n ń là kọjá. Ọ̀rọ̀ náà ló ń sọ pé ìyà yìí ti pọ̀ jù, pé wọ́n fẹ́ kí àwọn òtòṣì kí wọ́n lè ní àwọn ọmọ Nàìjíríà rere, afẹ́ kí wọ́n lè ní kí wọ́n lè jọjọ kí gbogbo nǹkan ó lè ṣe dáadáa. Ìdí nìyí tí wọ́n ti kó ẹgbẹ́ ipò wọn ò wá jà ṣùgbọ́n wọ́n wá láti fẹ̀rẹ̀ náà ni. Bẹ́ẹ̀ náà ṣe rí gbogbo wọn àti NLC àti TUC gbogbo wọn ni wọ́n jáde.
We decided to also partner with the government by going to Abuja to engage them constructively. And by the time we got to House Dinner, we were asked to bring our charter of demands. One of which is the national minimum wage. Forward as 200,000 naira. Apart from that, we also gave a condition that the fourth finalists in the country must work, and Labour must be party to the supervisory committee that will see to the turnaround of all the refineries, and there must be a timeline. That the CNG, which is also an alternative to PMS, should come on stream. Among others, these are the charters of demand we gave to the federal government. Both parties ascended to that document.
Ní abẹ́ bíṣì Ìkẹjà ibi tí wọ́n ti ń fi ẹ̀hónú hàn sí ìjọba lórí ohun tí wọ́n ń ṣe.
Because as it is now, Nigerians are dying.
Ọkọ tí arákùnrin òyìnbó tí wọ́n ilẹ̀ Nàìjíríà.
The last thing we have to tell the government is for the country assistance that they send to us for what is supposed to us. So, the government of China has to do this. So, we decided to work out of the people who said, since the federal government is just giving us.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
As of state and government, Secretary General, delegates.
This was the Labour voting for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses in Still Counting.
A very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news briefing Spectrum live from Uyo. I am Mary Joseph. We begin this morning with an update from the national scene where the federal government has filed a contempt lawsuit against the Nigerian Labour Congress NLC and the Trade Union Congress TUC for allegedly resisting an order restricting the unions from embarking on an industrial action. The Solicitor General of the Federation and the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Justice, Beatrice Jedi Agba, has twice stated that the industrial action by the organized labor was illegal, noting that there was no subsisting interim order restraining NLC from embarking on any industrial action. Away from that, the President Bola Tinubu has assured the leaders of the organized labor that the Port Harcourt refinery will commence operation by December 2023. Tinubu pledged to ensure that the agreement is reached with the wage award for Nigerian workers immediately. The organized labor revealed this in a statement. The labor centers also noted that the president made a series of promises following which they agreed to return to the negotiation table. The national president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Joe Ajaero, and Trade Union Congress, Festus Osifo, in a statement, also hailed Nigerians for supporting the nationwide protests. Back here, Akwa Ibom State Governor Pastor Moeno has announced that he has approved the sum of 1 billion naira for the payment of gratuities to retired primary school teachers. Governor Enohu made the announcement when he addressed the organized labor in the state where he was on a peaceful protest over the effects of the fuel subsidy removal on the people. Also announced that the sum of 800 million naira has been approved to collect the backlog of leave grants owed the workers, stressing that moving forward he has to approve that leave grants be paid alongside with salaries to avoid unnecessary accumulation of entitlements. On the foreign scene, Kyiv Infrastructure Minister Kubrakov said that Russia has demanded almost 40,000 tons of grain in an overnight strike on southern Ukrainian ports near the Danube River. Kubrakov added that the grain was destined for some African countries, China and Israel, and accused Russia of using Iranian drones to carry out the attack. Reports say that these are the very ports that have become the foundation of global food insecurity. In sport, Arsenal striker Gabriel Jesus has had minor knee surgery and will miss the start of the Premier League season. Jesus did not play in pre-season win over Monaco, and manager Mikel Arteta confirmed afterwards that the Brazil forward will be out for a few weeks after a lethal procedure. The 26-year-old injury is related to the knee problems he had last season, which also required surgery. We'll have details of this and more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's head back to Rise and Shine, where we have Francis and Uyai on standby. To have a wonderful morning.
As of state and government, Secretary General, delegates.
This was the Lagos Nigeria for Spectrum TV to recover 40 lives in State County.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on StarTimes to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories on how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court,
my lord. Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Glad to welcome you back. This is Rise and Shine coming to you live on Spectrum TV. In case you just joined us, that means you've missed out a lot, but you can catch up on our socials at spectrumtv.ng to be part of the conversations. Really like to hear from you about your reactions to the different things happening in Nigeria. But shortly before we went to that break, we talked about the incident in Lagos State with the medical doctor who was involved in the elevator accident, of course, the reactions of the enemy. We also talked about the power court from the federal government of Nigeria to Niger Republic as part of the sanctions to the military junta in the country that has taken over power from the democratically elected president. Of course, we're also looking at the different issues rising from, the standpoint of the NLC, and the ministerial lease was also another focus. But we are going to extensively deal with, the NLC and the protests at this point. Recall yesterday, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu did actually send a ministerial lease, the second batch of the ministerial lease, to the National Assembly and for screening. And of course, Nigerians have reacted to the fact that we are having a lot more governors on the list, and it seems that Ahmed Bola Tinubu is just recycling people who have been there on the scene for a long time. And Nigerians are asking to see if the president could not have found other hands, technocrats, professionals across the different fields to be part of his, ministerial list, and of course, people who will be forming his cabinet. But then, aside from that, there are also conversations bordering on what portfolio these respective persons, will be entrusted with. Will they be competent? Are they competent enough to handle these responsibilities? Be that as it may, it's just another way Nigerians need to wait and see after the screening, the portfolio assignment, what these respective individuals will be given. But right about now, let's come back to deal with the issue of the NLC TUC protests yesterday that happened across some states of the Federation and Akwa Ibom State also. I like to start off from Akwa Ibom State, a very primary constituent. So yesterday we had the NLC chairman, Comrade Sonny James, speak glowingly about, the demands of the NLC in Akwa Ibom State. First, they went to the Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly. They went to the government house, and of course, during those interactions, a few things stood out for me. One, they made a demand that the Akwa Ibom State government needs to prioritize welfare of its people, the staff of the state government, the welfare of the people. They also made a staggering revelation. Recall some time ago, the federal government had moved for the upgrading of all School of Sciences to College of Medical Sciences. Now, the NLC alleged that since that directive was given, Akwa Ibom State government is yet to upgrade the different school of nursing in the state to College of Medical Sciences in the state. Of course, this would mean that these colleges would now be shifted from the Ministry of Health to the Ministry of Education. They allege that politics has been played for way too long at the detriment of Akwa Ibom people, sons and daughters who have interest in the medical profession or in the medical field. And this is not sitting well because some persons within the, the state medical ministry or the Ministry of Health are refusing to allow the government to actually upgrade these different schools of nursing into College of Health Sciences, so that, because they know if that actually happens, they will be transferred from the authorities, the leadership and management of the Ministry of Health to the Ministry of Education, who will be saddled with the responsibility to look at this. And of course, one thing they've also stated clearly is the fact that in the event that the upgrade is made, not only will it be of great benefit to Akwa Ibomites and people within the surrounding states who are interested in pursuing a career in the medical or in the nursing field, it will also mean that these schools, now being saddled with the responsibility of growing, will be able to access funds and grants to expand the school, to build more structures, more facilities, and upgrade the institution, which of course, if we look at the long-term effect, the long-term benefit, it is in the interest of Akwa Ibom people. But this also shows for that we have seen a lot of very funny, useless politics being played in issues that concerns growth, in issues that concerns advancement, in issues that concerns transforming the landscape of Akwa Ibom State, just like we've seen in other states of the Federation?
Well, a lot is happening with regards to the protest, having witnessed it firsthand. And of course, the work was done, first of all, started out at the NLC Secretariat, and then the work straight to the State House of Assembly, where they were greeted with some members of the State House. Of course, there was a representative there who spoke on behalf of the Speaker of the House of Assembly in Akwa Ibom State, and of course a list of demands of things that the Akwa Ibom State chapter of NLC TUC want from the state government was handed over to them. And I know that top of the list of some of the things they were asking was, with regards to the School of Nursing that you've just talked about. They also talked about wages for workers within the NLC. We're also looking at the fact that one of the biggest questions that the NLC TUC were asking yesterday was, I know that, it's of no news that Akwa Ibom State is one of the highest grossing states in terms of monthly allocations from the federal government, of course, because of our, oil production. And as we speak, as of the NLC's work yesterday, Akwa Ibom State had not yet given palliatives. And it was more like, how is this happening when we have, some lesser grossing states had already begun to give their workforce palliatives, but until that yesterday we had not heard the state governor come to say what exactly he intended to do for workers in Akwa Ibom State in form of palliatives. Yesterday also, speaking at the government house yesterday when the NLC journeyed to the government house to see the governor, Pastor Omoino, of course, we had the governor give some very lofty promises yesterday were made by the governor of the state yesterday. Of course, he talked about the fact that he had just released 1 billion naira to offset gratuity of primary school teachers, retired primary school teachers, and also 800 million naira was also released for payments of leave arrears. And of course, like he also said there is a new structure that is being worked in to make sure that if people went on leave, they got their leave grants as as part of their salary package for those months instead of accumulating. And of course, this received a very rousing applause from the state governor, as it were. But then when it came to the conversation of palliatives, we had the governor saying he had set up a committee which will see that palliatives are delivered to workers in 10 days. I remember that part of the questions were, what exactly is the Akwa Ibom State government palliative package for its workers? Because the governor had reiterated yesterday that palliatives that have been released by the federal government. Remember that in the president's speech a fortnight ago, he had said palliatives were going to be released in Nigeria. Certain tons of grains were going to be dispatched nationwide. The governor had said, of course, that the palliatives as released by the president is getting to Akwa Ibom very soon. And workers are asking, the palliative we are receiving, is it the one that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu promised Nigerians, or is it the one that has been put together by the Akwa Ibom State government for its workers? Let's give voice to the speech of the governor at this time, and then we'll just get right back into the conversation.
Well, you see, just within the course of the week, I think earlier on Monday we saw Akwa Ibomites beginning to ask questions what is happening to the palliative, why is the state government not rolling out the palliatives to the people, and what is a palliative like, and how is it going to affect the people, and what modalities is being put in place to ensure that this goes down to the very people who truly need this palliative. Now, during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown and all of that, I was opportune to be part of the government of the day's distribution team. I was part of the media contacted to monitor and post about these things. And it was very crazy to discover that palliatives were stored in people's houses. Politicians, paramount rulers, you name them. And then when it was time for distribution, you find maybe a house was filled with bags of rice, and just a couple of bags of rice are being taken out and being measured out to the people. And then you come back. These politicians use these bags of rice to give out to people who are their loyalists, to people who are their supporters. At this point in time, one of the concerns raised by the NLC, the TUC, Human Rights Organization, has been that it's about time we put the right structures in place. Yes, we are talking about palliatives, but how can we be sure that these palliatives will get to the people who truly need them? How can we be sure that we are not going to play politics with the palliatives? These are concerns that Akwa Ibomites are raising. And of course, the Akwa Ibom State governor did say that is going to be distributed within the course of, I think, 1 week. He said, yeah, one or thereabout. But then these concerns need to be looked into, and Akwa Ibomites want to see that beyond the party in power, that's the PDP, Akwa Ibomites across all the party lines will be able to benefit from the palliative, both from the state government and the federal government, in a way that the people can say, yes, we have been well served by the leadership of this state.
Well, we are also looking at the demands of, the NLC holistically at the national level. What exactly are they asking for? 200% increase in wages is part of what was asked for. Of course, they also asked that the federal government withdraws, the whole subsidy removal thing. There's been speculations about the fact that the whole subsidy removal idea is a sham. Let's not forget that a couple of days back, the president had actually come out to say that Nigeria had saved about 1 trillion naira in the last month for not subscribing to subsidy. Big question. I know that I was in a public transport fair, and people were asking, okay, this 1 trillion naira that has been saved up by the federal government for not subsidizing on fuel commodity, what exactly are they planning to use the 1 trillion naira for? Where are they going to invest it? Do not forget that NLC is also asking that modular refineries be reactivated. They're asking that the 4 refineries must work, now in the country. Let's begin to produce our crude oil and what do we call it? There's a proper word for it that is keeping my mind. We need to, that's not the word, I'm reading it in my hand, but it's not coming in my head. But we need to be able to, it's not recycled, don't do that. Refine. Thank you very much. Refine is the word. We need to be able to refine our crude within the country. These are some of the things that the labor union was asking yesterday. And then just after the protest, nationwide, it was meant to be nationwide, but we had some states rather in the north, northeast now, withdraw, from this particular nationwide move by the NLC, because we had asked this one, is it just NLC or is it Nigerians? Remember that Sonny James, comrade Sonny James, who is the NLC chair, had said it is Nigerians that are moving out to, have a peaceful walk to tell the federal government that what's going on is not acceptable and not good for all Nigerians. But then for the states where we saw this protest happen, of course, like in Akwa Ibom State, it was massively peaceful. We had security agents spread all over the state, and so there was stability, there was peace, and then the NLC TEC just communicated their grievances to the leadership of the state, and of course they got the responses as it followed. But we are also seeing the fact that the NLC is saying that we need to do better, even by policies that this present administration is reeling out for citizens. Where are we on things? Where, I had said earlier it's too early for us to begin to score Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But when we look at the trajectory of the policies that are being reeled out by the Tinubu-led administration, in the next couple of weeks, in the next couple of months, running into the first year in office, to the next 4 years, if he remains on sit, where will these policies be taking us to in the next 4 years?
Now, one thing Nigerians are not so certain at this point is you need technocrats, you need experts, you need professionals, you need people who have the willpower to drive policies. Now, we're already having concerns and questions around the ministerial list that has been sent to the National Assembly, and Nigerians at this point, Nigerians actually anticipate. Now, let's take, for instance, part of the concerns to their full capacity. That is one. In the event that we do this, Nigeria would have been able to cut the different challenges bordering on fuel subsidy. But then we saw Ahmed Bola Tinubu speaking that the Port Harcourt refinery will be operational by the end of, December. By December this year. That's about, give or take, about 4 months from now. Now, you're telling us the Port Harcourt refineries will be working 4 months from now. What happens to the rest of the refineries? And you're just telling us it will work. What modalities have you put in place to say that this is actually going to work? We've had comments like this coming from the federal government. We are restructuring. We are, working on these. We are putting in things in place. And months after, years after, we don't see anything happening. Let's not forget in a hurry the sham that happened with, the Nigerian carrier, the Nigerian Air, that Nigerians are yet to even hear the next line of actions for that act, that shameful act of, hiring a plane from outside the shores of Nigeria, painting it and parading it as Nigeria Air. These are concerns. These are valid concerns on the minds of Nigerians. Can we trust the Ahmed Bola Tinubu's led federal government to actually deliver? And at this point in time, many would say it seems Ahmed Bola Tinubu, the president, is just talking talks, because NLC has kickstarted the protest. Nigerians have joined the protest, and it's just a matter of time before other states, most states, get to join the bandwagon of protesting against, the poor policy statement. But then it also raises a question. While the president has met with the leadership of the NLC and TUC, the same federal government is also before the law court asking for the arrest of the leadership of these two unions or trade union organization. The questions are, if indeed the federal government is sincere in its resolve to, remedy the situation and cushion the effect of fuel subsidy removal, while still try to utilize the instrumentality of the state to muzzle the leadership of the NLC and the TUC, while go before the court and seek the arrest of the leaders of these two organizations, that is a big question, because it doesn't show that the federal government is ready to come to the negotiation table. It doesn't show that they are willing to hear the cries of Nigerians. It doesn't show that they are ready to put an end to the different, issues that has been itemized and forwarded as a reason for this protest. Because if they were, the issue with the court should have been put to an end. The issue of seeking the arrest of the leadership of the NLC and TUC should not come into play at this point. And if they are committed to seeing changes in Nigeria, to solving the problem Nigerians are crying for, then the only option out for Ahmed Bola Tinubu and his administration and those at the helms of affairs with him would have been to come to a dialogue. Understand that, yes, what Labour is asking for, what TUC is asking for, what Nigerians are asking for are well within their rights. And at this point, as the leader who has sworn to lead the people, who has said he's ready to listen to the people, and of course, just yesterday, we also saw the president saying he's going to open the Aso Rock up for more to show more accountability and, of course, transparency, sincerity, and all of that. So, where is the sincerity of purpose in going to court or using the instrumentality of the court to try and arrest these two leadership? Where is the commitment to accountability when you have not shown for that, the commitment and the procedures made in place to ensure that the refineries is working? You've not told us in exact terms what state the Port Harcourt refineries, for instance, is at the moment. How do you intend to take it to the point of actually being operational by December? So all of these are just making Nigerians feel like this is just another talk. This is another set of, promises that may never come to see the light of the day. and is still leading in the wrong direction. Nigerians do not want talks. Nigerians want action. They want to see action. And like you rightly stated, if we are going to sit back 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 4 years from now to see that the policy statement of Ahmed Bola Tinubu has actually led to the advancement of the country, we all have to see from the body language. We all have to see from the blueprint laid in place. We all have to see from the implementation processes from day one. When we see from the start the implementation processes is good, the modalities put in place is good, there is commitment, there is a time frame to all of these procedures, then Nigerians will be able to have confidence. Until that is done, until that is made open in line with what Ahmed Bola Tinubu has said, that the media is going to be given a free hand as well, then Nigerians are not going to have confidence.
Well, there's a lot to talk about with regards to this particular issue. Amid the protest that was going on nationwide, we had the leaders of NLC, Joe Ajero, and the leadership of TUC led by Festus Osifo in a meeting with the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Of course, they registered their demands before the president during the meeting. President disclosing that the president understands the plight of Nigerians and made some commitments to address their urgent demands. I remember that news making the rounds yesterday was the fact that NLC, TUC were satisfied with the results of the meeting that they had with the president yesterday. Of course, we are looking at them being able to table their demands as organized labor before the president. Of course, they also said the president made this commitment to address some issues which need immediate attention, and they said they would report to the executive committees where a decision would be taken on the ongoing protest. Now, adding that Labour would conduct its National Executive Committee NEC meeting today, being the 3rd of August, and all issues would be considered. Okay, so we are also seeing that matters that were deliberated in the meeting with the president yesterday will be discussed at the NLC NEC meeting today, because I know that part of the things that Joe Ajero had said yesterday was that they were going to know if the protest was going to end just yesterday, depending on how things went yesterday. So we now see, to a very large extent, we may be able to say that the NLC, TUC were able to achieve the purpose for which they walked the streets of Nigeria yesterday. So hence, we are not hearing, further protest walks around the nation this morning. Rather, we'll be seeing an NEC meeting holding today to reevaluate some of the, communique that was placed before the president yesterday. I know that part of the most important conversation has been the timeliness to delivery of things promised by the federal government. And even when you even talk about state governments across the 36 states also, we are saying just not the promissory of this is going to be done, that is going to be done. When will these things be done? Even with regards to palliative, Nigerians have already lived under this burden for 2 whole months. When is respite going to be coming? There has to be time attached to these things, of course. But we see that at the end of the day, the NLC, TEC were able to have a talk with the president, because it takes my mind back to the fact that the federal government had prior to this time set up a committee to look into the grievances of the labor union, the organized labor force. But then it is reported time without number by the NLC that these meetings, these committees did not even sit, talk less of having memoranda with all of these organizations to even talk about what the issues were. They didn't sit. But now it's good because part of the big questions we were asking before the protest held yesterday was, to what end? What will this protest achieve? Will it get the federal government to listen to the plight of Nigerians being tendered by the NLC TUC? But it looks like Nigerians were able to achieve one thing yesterday, having gained the audience of the president yesterday to listen to Joe Ajero and Festus Osifo on behalf of Nigerians yesterday. Let's also hope that this also goes beyond filling the stomach of the leadership of the NLC and the TUC at this time. Let it be that when we say we are making a move on behalf of Nigerians, we are indeed making a move for the good of all Nigerians at this time. But just to further drive the conversation around the NLC protest and all of the resultant effects, a big question rises. If Nigerians to a very, very large extent, had a peaceful walk nationwide. Then the leadership of the NLC-TUC were able to meet with the president and be able to come out and say, we believe that this was a successful meeting. How then are we now hearing information of the same federal government as led by the president Bola Ahmed Tinubu, because he's the lead man? How then are we now hearing that this same federal government is moving a court injunction to get, the NLC and the TUC leaders to face the courts because of what's the word now, going against the court order to not have the protest? At the end of the day, when we put all of this together, it really does not make any sense even to the layman. How do we have all these conversations and yet they are to face the court?
Well, this is going back to what I said earlier. It shows that the federal government, led by Ahmed Bola Tinubu, is not even ready to be sincere and transparent in its dealing with Nigerians. Because if they were sincere, if they were committed to not seeing another what scenario playing out across the streets of Nigeria, then the negotiation, the talks between the president and the leadership of NLC and TUC yesterday would have put a logical end to whatever court processes the federal government was instigating at this point. But since they have not done that, maybe Nigerians would expect or would feel that the president had to meet with the NLC and TUC leadership as a way of telling Nigerians, okay, I'm actually working, whereas it's just one of the political strategy to keep the people calm while still going ahead to do what the federal government under President Ahmed Bola Tinubu plans to do. But we wait to see the legality within the course of the case that has been put forward to the court by the federal government. We know that as far as the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is concerned, Nigerians do have the right to peaceful association and protest over poor government policies, and that is exactly what happened yesterday. And the labor union TUC had clarified that it is not a strike action, but rather a protest of poor government policies. But we'll get to wait and see how this will play out. But this is where we'll take a short pause and head out for another break. When we'll come back, Rise and Shine will be continuing. Stay with us.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is still Rise and Shine. Of course, several topical issues have been discussed on the floor this morning. Leading is the NLC protest and all of the resultant conversations that have followed that nationwide protest. Of course, in Akwa Ibom, we saw some of the very lofty promises being made by the governor, Pastor Omoyeno, and also at the federal level, we also see that the NLC TUC said they had a successful meeting with the president yesterday. We await what the results of these meetings are going to be. At this point, they're saying today no more protests will be going on, but they'll be having an NEC meeting to look at the issues that were raised with the president. But big question, when the federal government has moved a court sanction to get the NLC and TUC leadership arrested, where is this conversation really taking us at this time? We have different heads with just the NLC protest on ground right now. But at this point, we're going to take a quick swipe and look at a few front pages of the national dailies whilst we get our TUC chair in Akwa Ibom State to join us while we have a little chit chat as to the results of the protest yesterday. Let's do a quick swipe at Daily Spotlight. As expected, most of the front pages will be filled with the protest stories. So let's go to the Vanguard newspaper this morning and see what they have to say. Of course, Labour protest hardship as Tinubu wades in. We see federal government moves to placate Labour with wage award and others. We also see here that there is a reply to the steering committee to roll out CNG vehicles. Okay, we are returning to negotiations with federal government, says NLC TUC. Remember that they had pulled out from those negotiations last week. We also see here cut down cost, use most of these things are ineligible, but you can pick up the Vanguard to see that. We also see here economic hardship. Workers withdraw 3 billion naira from pension savings. That is really scary. Page 19 is where you can find details. If people are taking out their future monies just to cope today, what happens to tomorrow? Wow. Okay, we also see here coup. Nigeria cuts power supply to Niger Republic. UK's 38 million pounds aid making a difference in Northeast, says Foreign Secretary. We also see here ministerial nominees, 5 ex-governors, 14 others make Tinubu's second list. We also have here, of course, a picture story of Tinubu with Labour leaders parley at Aso Rock. How infrastructure decay hampers judicial system. That story is on page 22. We really want to find out what this is about. We also see here Guba polls will win Kogi Imo by Elsa. PDP boost. APC crisis, anxiety over possible dissolution of NWC. Page 13 is where we can find details of that particular story. And of course, in sports, Vanguard Sport this morning, we see no World Cup bonus for Super Falcons, says NFF. Page 39 is where we can find details of that particular story. And we move ahead from the Vanguard this morning and we look at the front page of Nigerian Tribune. Big story there says after Labour protest, Tinubu says Port Harcourt refineries to work by December. Okay. We also see here medical doctors protest as colleague dies in Lagos hospital elevator accident. NMA declares indefinite strike in 3 hospitals. Lagos government begins inquiry. Page 15 is where you can find details. Nominations open for 2023 Obafemi Awolowo Leadership Prize. Page 8 is where you can find details of that particular story. Of course, a picture story of the new 19 added ministerial nominees as Senate receives 19 additional names. We also see here Abdul Salami to lead ECOWAS mission to Niger as 10 defense chiefs meet in Abuja. We also see how US brewery produces beer with water recycled from showers, sinks, washing machines, etc. Page 29 is where we can find details of that story. I am not sure how that makes me feel. Well, they said it's recycled and it's recycled for a reason. Okay, we also see here that workers pull down NAS gate, meet Senate leaders. Federal government sues NLC, TUC over contempt of court. Labour mobilizes workers to storm court. Of course, there's going to be a ripple effect of some of these kinds of injunctions that have been sent out by the federal government. A quick swipe, let's look at this day newspaper. This day, of course, we also see Tinubu promised PH refinery ready by December. Labour suspends protest, extends dialogue. We also see here federal government to negotiate new salary award. Senate intervenes, promises resolution. Labour threatens to occupy courts over contempt charge. Federal government must cut down cost of governance, says TUC. Rivers workers to president, allow us to breathe, fix refineries. Okay. Nigeria's military on alert, cuts power supply to Niger as ECOWAS continues dialogue. Tinubu throws country into darkness, cuts power supply. Commissioner says failing to act may diminish regional bloc, dismisses threat from Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea-Bissau. Hints on standby force to protect democracy in West Africa. Of course, we've seen experts saying that that particular move must be diplomatically executed. We do not have control over fuel price. Dollar, says CBN. We do not have control over fuel price and dollar, says CBN. Page 10 is where you can find details. We also see here Tinubu canvasses stronger economic defense, bilateral cooperation with UK. British government reiterates support for ECOWAS, moves to reinstate Niger president. Of course, lots of things happening on the front pages of our national dailies this morning. We do hope that we can gain some respite. Let's see what the Nation has to say this morning. Also, the Nation newspaper, of course, Labour talks with Tinubu on cost of living fruitful. Like we said earlier, they had established that they had a fruitful meeting with the president. We also see here 150 million spent on fuel importation monthly, says central bank. We also see here how government can win corruption cases by Fagbemi. Alake control social media. Page 5. ECOWAS gears up for military action in Niger. Page 5. APC NEC to decide fate of NWC members today. We also see here ministers Oyetola, Bagudu, Matawale, 16 others on supplementary list. Of course, we read here international electricity customers owing $16.11 million in bills, says NERC. Okay. We also see here that NMA declares indefinite strike in Lagos over doctor's death. Okay, these are some of the stories making the rounds on our national dailies this morning. And the very last paper that will be taken right now is going to be The Punch. Subsidy protests, of course. Banks, offices shut amid rallies. Labour demands 200,000 naira wage. NLC, TUC leaders hold emergency NEC meeting today after special meeting with Tinubu and National Assembly. Federal government sues Labour leaders, says protests will be suspended. How protesters broke National Assembly gate. Page 2 and page 7 is where we have all the details of that story. Of course, picture story of the nationwide strike right there on the front page of The Punch. We also, of course, repeated story here of the power cut in Niger Republic by the Nigeria electricity sector. Federal government delisted 18 illegal loan arms. Please find the details on page 19. Ondo oil producing area indigents protest unpaid bursary. Page 11 is where you can find details. PDP inaugurates campaign council for Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi polls. Lagos probes doctor's death in hospital elevator. Colleagues shun work. Page 4 and 5 is where we can find details. Last story on the Punch this morning says community protest demolition seeks Sanwo-Olu's intervention. Page 4 and 5 is where we can find details of that particular story this morning. And that's all we are taking on the front pages of our national dailies. A myriad of issues happening. But let's see what the NEC meeting by the NLC would reel out today, of course, especially with regards to the court order against them this morning. But that's where we'll take a rest with regards to Daily Spotlight. Let's take a quick break. When we return, Rise and Shine will bring you the concluding part. Do stay with us.
allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my Lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My Lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My Lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my Lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court, my Lord.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my Lord. These cases are in court, my Lord. I'm just reminding your Lordship.
My Lord, sorry, my Lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Welcome back. Of course, this has been Rise and Shine, brought to you by Spectrum Television. And several conversations have already gone on. We'd like to encourage you to be a part of the growing community. Make your contributions. Please send us feedback on our programs, whether it's Rise and Shine or any other program. We'd like to know how best to serve you. Of course, we've looked at several issues this morning on Rise and Shine, a plethora of issues, of which also made some repetition on the front pages of our national dailies. But biggest conversation this morning is also NLC protest palliative released by the federal government and the request of some state government, some states to their state government to release palliatives. Akwa Ibom state governor has said 10 days palliatives are going to be released to workers, but the question remains, the palliatives that the governor is talking about, is it the one generated by the state government for its people, or just the one that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has promised workers and Nigerians? But let's see what the committee, which the governor promised will be instituted to have these deliberations, will come up to say. Of course, on the heel of the NLC protest yesterday and the meeting with the president, we also hear that the NLC is going in for an emergency NEC meeting today. Let's see what the responses will be. Of course, what communique will be read out of that particular meeting, and let's see where the nation is facing. Part of the biggest questions with regards to all of this protest and rising cost of living in the country and all the promises that have been made by the president and some state governors, the big questions on the lips of Nigerians is, when will these palliatives be delivered to Nigerians? Let's not forget that the president had pleaded, even during his speech a fortnight ago, to Nigerians to please, bear with the pains that, we are currently facing. But of course, that particular statement has been greeted with a lot of criticism by Nigerians and different stakeholders in the system. If Nigerians are the ones bearing the brunt for the pain of all of the, unfriendly policies being wheeled out by this administration, what's happening to our public service office holders and our politicians? How impacted are they by these policies? But most of these things remain questions, some of which every now and then the leadership in the country is giving us responses. Of course, we continue to see people lauding the president for the speech and for coming out to address Nigerians at this time, but Nigerians are still asking, how soon will the palliatives be delivered to Nigerians? Is it possible to renege on the subsidy removal, of which, of course, we see that the Tinubu-led administration is not giving any of that kind of body language as to whether or not that is going to be a possibility. Speculations around 1 trillion naira being recovered from not paying subsidy in the last month. NLC, of course, in their conversation with the president and during the protest yesterday, had even disclaimed on that particular claim of 1 trillion naira. But even so, 1 trillion has been saved. Where is that 1 trillion naira going to be injected into in the economy of Nigeria? A lot of questions to be asked. But of course, this is where we're going to draw the curtain of Rise and Shine today. We're giving you a plethora of some of these questions for you to also ask questions. Please be deliberate about asking those you elected into the National Assembly and State Houses of Assembly questions that would impact on the lives of Nigerians. We are the ones who voted for them into office. Let's hold them accountable for the things that they are doing at the helms of affairs. You can do well to use our social media handles to air some of your concerns and some of your questions, and we'll do a good job of looking into these issues and also bringing in resource persons that can help us look into the eyes of government and ask really requisite question. But until tomorrow, where we come again to talk Nigeria, my name is Uyai, and again, thanks for being a part of Rise and Shine. Let's do this again tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day. God bless you.